All right. Hope everyone's in the right talk here. It's the last one, so I think if you're not, then that's going to be in bigger trouble. All right. A little bit about myself before we go ahead and jump in. Josh Danielson. I'm the head of information security over at Copart. Copart's probably one of the largest organizations you never heard of, with about $1 billion in annual revenue, sell about 2 billion cars a year. We're kind of like an eBay for online car auctions and salvage. So if you actually get a totalable car, there's about a 40% chance it's actually coming over to Copart. Pretty much an e-commerce site, I'd compare it in that realm. Been working in DevOps and also cloud technologies for about 5 or 6 years now. I guess that makes me a veteran in comparison to most. So I've been all over the place. Formerly, actually just joined Copart probably about 2 months ago. I was formerly heading up a cloud engineering group over at Capital One. Capital One had the endeavor to make all customer-facing services cloud one way or another by the year 2020. So really making a big push. Oh, one other thing I should say. We're actually doing some hiring right now. So if anyone's interested, we're hiring all the way from interns all the way to senior managers across all groups, from dev to infrastructure or whatever else it may be. So grab me, tweet me, whatever. Just reach out to me if you think you might be a fit and interested in learning more. So what's the first thing you think of when you think of cloud? Secure, right? Well, not so much. So despite all the all the recent evolutions within cloud in the past few years, it's still probably plagued by security professionals being one of the most untouted things we actually like to hear. After all, who outsources anything critical? Well, it turns out we actually do these things all the time, right? No one's actually stuffing under their 401k underneath their mattress, or hopefully not. I'm kind of concerned if you are. But really, saying no is a security failure. I think we all kind of know that. Anyone who's successful in the information security industry knows that if you don't think you're in the cloud, well, someone's using Dropbox, someone's using Google Drive, someone's doing something in your organization that you just don't know of. And the best way you can actually reduce risk for the organization is enable the business to go at business pace and help manage those types of risks. So if your CEO says you're going to go do cloud and you say no, well, guess who's going to win? Or who needs to ramp up their resume building skills sometime soon? Indeed, indeed. So I kind of talked about this before. I mean, everyone has these functions all over the place. We outsource critical stuff all the time. And it turns out big banks are actually good at storing that stuff. All those are all kinds of risks. I mean, they have assurances in place. The FDIC insures most of our bank accounts for at least $100,000, right? I mean, so there's assurance, there's mechanisms to actually ensure we can actually do these things securely. I'm going to go and skip this code a little bit. Cloud computing is often more secure than traditional computing because companies like Google, Amazon can attract and retain cybersecurity personnel at a higher quality than most governmental agencies. This is the CIO at a federal agency. At best estimate I've seen recently, the unemployment rate for security professionals is 0%. How's your programs going so far? I mean, I'm actually hiring a few folks as well, as I'm sure a few other folks are too. It's hard to find good people. When you do, you got to be able to latch onto them, and if not, I mean, they're going somewhere else. So this is kind of one of the biggest challenges I think has grown even more so in the past few years or so. I'm not to be bashed, I'm not a huge AWS guy per se, although most of my experience comes with AWS. But for contextual prefaces for the rest of this conversation, this will be on AWS, and I'll use them as kind of a reference model going forward. So big user of GCE as well, also Azure too, so big fan of those. I think Azure is actually coming up quite a bit more in the next few years. Google's a little bit farther with GCE, but they'll get up to speed as well. One of the biggest things I always like to start off with is a shared responsibility model. Auditors just like flips their head. They have no clue what this actually means, and then I have to explain it to them like one thing at a time. I have to coddle them like a 4-year-old child. But you have to know what your responsibility is. What are you supposed to be doing, and what is the cloud service provider supposed to be doing? So many times I'll talk to people in AWS, using AWS, and they're like, oh yeah, patching for Windows OS, I don't need to do that. Amazon does that. I was like, no, they don't. You better recheck what are you really clouding? I don't know. It leads for a frustration sometimes when people just find out that they're actually not using cloud the way they thought they were using cloud. This was also a useful piece as I start tearing apart the cloud stack. Starting at the very top, you look at the application service layer, in the middleware, databases and web services, at the bottom, hypervisors and also auto-scaling capabilities. But I'm not here as far as a cloud component, cloud advocate to say cloud fixes all your problems. If you suck now, you'll be pleasantly surprised by the lack of change when you move to the cloud. It doesn't mean you don't get to you can fire all these security people and you don't have to do all this kind of stuff. It means the skill set you need in order to interact with the cloud is just fundamentally a little bit different. I can say when I was at Capital One, I don't think I actually hired a single person on the team who had security in their title before. A lot of skill set that is needed is full stack, development, CCMPs, whatnot. They're not traditional security people because security is so far behind. And in order to keep pace, the skill set is vastly different. It was much easier to train a network guy to be cloud than it was for a security guy to be cloud. So what ends up happening, cloud isn't necessarily insecure or secure. It's really just different. And the way you approach it, in a lot of cases, will determine if it's successful or not. It's not appropriate for everyone in every single use case, but really finding out the areas that you can use cloud makes a lot more sense than just saying no as a whole. All right, so quick agenda for today. I'm going to go over some cloud principles, cloud 1.0 versus 2.0, security in the cloud, and then also managing scalability. Cloud principles. So these are for a few core tenets. Everyone's really aware now that cloud's out there and things are happening. And then I kind of get frustrated when I have to explain to my CEO that the Wall Street Journal came out with an article and says, cloud is horrible and people lose lots of money and cloud isn't for no one. Well, the reason why, and everyone that actually works hands on the keyboard actually knows, is because people are cloud washing their solutions. They're just doing lift and shift, moving these traditional applications over into cloud, and they still suck. Well, they sucked on-prem too, and you want them to get better because they're in AWS? No, they still suck. So that's really one of the biggest pieces. So that's why I think not every organization has to have all 5 of these principles, but understanding when to use it and when the business needs to use this is probably key, and then being able to work with their development teams to engineer towards those goals. One of them is service-based. So is it actually on demand? If you have to submit a ticket and you get a server probably about 2-3 days later, that's probably not cloud. I've seen a few organizations try to pawn this off as being cloud technologies. Scalable and elastic. When demand goes up, does the resources go up with it as well? So one of the best examples, and I'll use them throughout the talk, is actually Netflix. When the new season of House of Cards comes out, I think it was on this last season that came out, they're responsible for almost 35% of internet traffic. I mean, that takes a lot of resourcing. Needless to say, I think one of the things I heard from another company before that we were talking to is like, oh yeah, cloud, it doesn't scale. Who's using that other 65% of the internet? Shared. So, of course, there's private cloud and public cloud, but even in private cloud technology, you might have your own server, you might have your own hard disk, whatever, but you're still using some common infrastructure. It may be on the networking side, but you're still using something that's common to some degree. Metered by use. So kind of similar like your electricity bill or your water bill. At the end of each month, you get a big bill and it says what you actually used. It's kind of funny. We were talking about this at Capital One, and we're going to do another talk for this. We're going to maybe for Black Hat next year. We're talking about how can we, I swear, man, no one monitors this bill. It's kind of like kids with their electricity and just leave the lights on and whatnot, and then you get these huge bill, and they're like, hey, shut your servers down, our CTO has to tell us. Like, what if we can, I swear, I think we can steal a Ferrari. How can we do that? Like, I swear to God. So we actually thought about, no one actually did it. I haven't caught any or even heard anyone doing this, but on Amazon's shop, you can actually spin up your own AMIs. What if you actually set up your own AMI, you put it with some garbage type of title within your company, you spin it up and say, hey, this is some cool service that does some logging stuff, and you spin up 1,000 instances and shut them down immediately afterwards because they charge you per hour, so it scales up. And a regular instance might charge 8 cents an hour. What if you tell it to, I don't know, do like 70 cents an hour, and you spin up 1,000 instances and shut them right back down before anyone actually sees? Who's actually monitoring your bill for that stuff? I can tell you 99% of all enterprises using cloud are not monitoring for that kind of stuff at all. It just shows up as an EC2 line item on your monthly bill, and no one would even know. Uses cloud technology. So there's really open APIs in mobile. Cloud 1.0 versus Cloud 2.0. So Cloud 1.0, this is your old-fashioned Model T. It's good for what it was, but unfortunately it doesn't really work in today's day and age. Attributes of this, it really is migrating to software to the cloud. So this is what I was saying, lift and shift, where people just, you take it, instead of installing a piece of software on VMware, you just go ahead and install it on an EC2 instance. This is kind of a trademark. Several releases annually. So Microsoft with their Patch Tuesday, Oracle is probably one of the worst offenders with coming of updates almost quarterly. Not cloud. One word is cloud washed, lift and shift. There's probably a few other ones that people use too. And Cloud 2.0. Building software with provider. One of the biggest rebuttals that anyone comes back with is like, well, now you're locked into AWS. Now you're locked in with Azure or whoever else it may be. That's kind of sort of true to some degree, but what the newest developments that actually happened in the past few years with Dockers, with containers, I mean, now you can actually shift your container over from one cloud service provider over to another one. What if there was actually a technology that kind of worked like VMware? And just like you swap VMware, you can swap across different servers and physical environments. What if you can swap between multiple cloud service providers? And maybe you just say optimize it for cost. Amazon has a function for spot instances. It just means with instances get really, really cheap, buy them and let's spin up some stuff and run like a batch job and just do something and then shut it down because it's no longer cheap. What if you're able to actually click a button that says like optimize for cost and it can swap it out between all these multiple cloud service providers and it just runs there because it's the cheapest place to work your place your workload at the given time. So it's starting to get there. You see certain technologies like Kubernetes, Mesosphere. I mean, it's starting to kind of get there. No one's got there quite yet. But for the one who does, I mean.
The solution for migrating AWS Lambda functions?
That's what I was getting to next. So I think containers is probably somewhat cool and somewhat new. The latest cool kid on the block is serverless architectures, right? So what if you don't have to run any compute instances at all? It's really just a compute function. So it's like, I mean, theoretically, it's 100% efficiency, right? So you're not actually running any servers. There's actually a few organizations, I forget the name of one, they presented us at Capital One while I was there, but they're actually not running a single, their claim to fame is they're not actually not running a single server in their entire company at all for any functions, at all. So it's getting there. I don't think it's going to be ready for everyone, but I'm definitely seeing a few signs of those for like serviceless architectures. Infrastructure as code. So I actually got my start working in DoD, working with paperwork and NIST and all this other kind of stuff. Coming into the cloud and having to learn how to code, I was like, geez, I better find another career quick or you better learn pretty quick. If you don't know even some simple JSON, you better start to learn if you actually want to be successful in the cloud. You don't have to actually be an expert at it, but you have to be able to look through and actually understand how you actually build these types of technologies. Like I said, I didn't hire a single person that actually worked in security prior to, or with a security title in their title before. Just because, I mean, the stigmas are kind of true. Security people are kind of in their own corner. They don't want to learn. They just say no. I mean, that's kind of what I was actually finding in a lot of cases too, right? So I had to get people that were actually a little bit more open-minded and say, hey, this is brand new. No one's going to know it. Who wants to learn? Those were the people I was looking to hire. And streamlined agile processes. So, I mean, everyone's familiar with waterfall, hopefully, and then agile, of course, is one of the latest, not even latest, it's one of the things that's just starting to make its way into security sprints as well. We're finding every single organization I've now been part of 3 organizations that say they do agile. Everyone is always different, and that's never the book interpretation of it is. Agile is kind of whatever you can make it to be. I mean, it's not an academic approach, it's not anything else like that. If it makes you go faster and it works, then you're agiling. So it's whatever works for you guys. And several releases a day. Some of the top, I mean, like I said, Microsoft comes out their monthly Patch Tuesday. Some organizations are actually known for putting out several hundred deployments every single day of software. I think when Amazon came out, I think it was a shell shock last year, they were actually, for their front-end Elastic load balancers, they were able to patch all of their systems on the front end within 4 days. For a company like Amazon to be able to patch for something that within 4 days, that's pretty crazy. And I have a better example showing how patching actually happens in the cloud. Actually, there's no such thing as patch management in the cloud. If you do, in some capacity. All right, I'm not going to harp on this one too much. What are some traits of a successful cloud security program? Some are the traditional things you're already used to. You still have to do them here too. Standardizing some type of framework instead of just doing onesies and twosies things. You can use CSA, you can use NIST, whatever you like and you're most familiar with and you think what works. Some way to get a holistic perspective. Are you doing the things you're supposed to be doing? Reference architectures. This is pretty much the same piece. Let me dive into one with CI management, actually. So CI management, this is probably one of the largest frustrations I had coming on the government side of things. And you're trying to track down these users. You all know who they are. You know exactly who they are. They're always trying to plug in another network switch. They're the one with the little mini hotspot underneath their desks. For the first time ever in cloud, you actually know what you've got. You can actually log into your account and see how many instances are running right now. You actually have a complete inventory list at any given time. Now make sure people aren't standing up other AWS accounts. That's the other piece. Security and DevOps in cloud. Oh, DevOps. Oh, DevOps. DevOps, I mean, some people could describe it as a culture. Some people say it's a process. Some people say some companies call it a group. There's a DevOps team. It's a group that does their stuff. Again, kind of like Agile. I've never seen anyone actually does it really purely except for a few unicorns. If it makes you go faster and it helps do things, it brings more value to the business. I mean, in one way or another, I would consider that DevOps. It really looks different for every organization I've been part of and from what I've talked to other folks with. All right. Assembly line driven asset management. So I'm so used to working with auditors before, and of course when we start working with cloud, it was really troublesome. I didn't have a good answer for this. They come in and it's like, well, let me see your asset list. Let me see your server names. Let me see your IP addresses. And it's like, I can tell you what it is right now, and it's going to change tomorrow morning because I don't know what it's going to be because we have other things in auto. We have our instances in auto scaling groups, and they're going to come up and down. Well, what do you mean? Then how do you track it? How do you put those into change management? If you're doing stuff in a real cloud environment, you should be able to only have your CloudFormation templates, and those would actually drive the changes. Those are the objects that you can show the auditors, hey, this is our standard, this is our process, these are the things that go through change management. The servers, those are going to come up and down based on workload, but though every single one is always the exact same one. You don't have administrators logging into servers. You don't have anyone else making any minor changes when something happens. If something happens and you need to make an update to the CloudFormation template, kill the server, and have another one stand up in its place. That way every single one is standardized. You don't have a whole environment full of these one-offs that no one knows everything that's happening holistically. So we're all used to these server huggers. They're the people who actually can name off a single, what are the three servers for Exchange? Oh yeah, and they can name off and rattle off the top 3 IP addresses and also their names, right? Well, that's not really possible in the cloud environment, besides the fact that everyone's running Office 365 now. These are people who are really used to environments that never ever change. They're always static. They never change. Each server is unique in their own little snowflake way. Instead, in cloud, what we try to adopt is service-oriented solutions. So IPs and names, they're meaningless because they're coming up and down all the time. Who cares? It doesn't matter. They're going to change all the time. Systems are ephemeral. At Netflix, the average lifetime for their server, I think, was 21 days. So, I mean, these things are changing all the time. That also means on the security side of the house, if someone does have some type of foothold in your environment, even though no one does, if they do, they actually get those refreshed. So as soon as they get access to a box, it's getting recycled and getting refreshed constantly. Managing scalability. Is anyone here familiar with a blue-green deployment? All right, so this is what I'll give an example with patch management. So if you really get advanced, if you're really doing things right, you can never, ever have to patch a single server ever again. So I'll take this example where we have a stack that's already running right now. For this purpose, it's a green stack. This has probably been running for a month or two now, and the latest patches came out from Patch Tuesday or whatever else you got, and you have to stand up the new one. So you just update the AMI within your CloudFormation template, stand up a new one right next to it, make a change in the DNS record, and and then get rid of your old one. The key piece in this, because applications, this is the biggest problem we have whenever people try and move to the cloud. Their applications are so monolithic, they're so jumbled up, you can't get rid of anything, it's all or nothing. The key piece I didn't outline on this slide, you have to be able to separate your dynamic resources from your static resources. In this example, the static resource is the database you can see on the back end. The dynamic resource is that blue stack right there. Some places are always different, but if you can't work with your developers to come out with applications that can do that, you got problems. And that's why it's so hard for people to actually move to the cloud. Your applications have to be rebuilt from the ground up, for the most part. Sometimes we actually found this, that some applications can do this. A lot of times they can't. It's funny, because we actually got in this whole thing I call EBS volume carousel, where people would actually just take their running instance, they have their running volume on it too, and they have to upgrade because we didn't force it, and they detach it, running the same OS and everything else, say it's running like Python 2.2, and they spin up the new instance that's patched, and they take their EBS volume, attach it to. It's like, hey, look at the instance that's running. Well, it's still running the old version of Python 2.2, it's not running. So we there's a few tricks of the trade that still come along. It's definitely a big lesson for us too. We didn't really understand, like, oh crap, as soon as you got them down, someone comes up with some other way to get around the process. And technically, they're in compliance, right? So it was always a lesson learned. We're always one step behind even our own developers and our system administrators. So Cloud Factory. How do you actually build this out? Is actually build a Cloud Factory. So you start off with your base AMI. If you're not familiar with the term AMI, it just means Amazon Machine Image. You can compare it to an old gold image in your traditional environments. From there, you can actually install all of your monitoring, your testing, your performance, reliability testing, and actually integrate all the components for installs along the way. Well, that slide didn't quite work the way I was supposed to. And this really is a component of a Cloud Bakery. So when you look at the Cloud Bakery, you have the base AMI. I got a little bit of lag on my side, so bear with me here. You can attach your external repositories from there. That builds up your foundational AMI, and that's really the base that you start doing. And so every time you actually do this process, this is all automated. This is not something you have to do manually each and every time. This happens automatically every single time. You just have to update your CloudFormation templates. From there, you have actually a running server. You have a running EC2 instance. You update it with your latest install scripts. If there's a change that happens to your application because it's performing in a certain way and you need to change it, this is where you make the change in the script. And then you also you can bundle everything up in a CloudFormation template. So there's one single piece of information you have to manage and control in order to do all of these pieces. They're simply just pointing to references inside the CloudFormation template. And then you have a running functional server, an EC2 instance. And this isn't just for servers. This is for entire environments. Kind of like I was showing in the blue-green deployment. You didn't just automate a single server. You automate every component of the entire stack. This means the routing tables, the elastic load balancers, everything within. You can build these environments get stood up in minutes, and it takes you just a few seconds to actually initiate it. The best way to avoid failure is to fail constantly. And this really leads me to some of the tool sets that some folks are actually using right now. Netflix is probably one of the unicorn leaders in this space. They've had it out for quite a few years, but Chaos Monkey. Has anyone heard of Chaos Monkey? Okay, cool. So constantly actually turns down your servers on a regular basis. So when there actually is an actual outage, well, you're already used to it. You're already testing out your environment like this on a regular basis. So it goes around randomly shutting down servers in your environment, testing yourself for resiliency. They even got so good at this, they actually came up with a few years, shortly after Security Monkey, they have an entire simian army of all these types of tools they do for automatic testing, one of which is actually Chaos Gorilla. Amazon, if you don't know, functions in several regions in the United States. Probably think they have 5 in North Virginia, if I remember right. And it'll shut down entire data centers How many people are resilient enough you can see your CEO like, hey, we just lost the data center and we're still running just fine. It just migrates over to another availability zone or it migrates across the country. And no one even noticed. All right, embracing the DevOps philosophy. Like I said, if these are things that are coming regardless, whether you're ready for it or not, it's coming. One of the first books I actually read was Toyota Kata. They were DevOpsing before anyone else, before the word even exists. I was kind of funny when I was reading it. They'd invite people like Ford and GM to come in and look at their factories, and then a month or two later, same companies would come back. And they're like, well, we copied all this stuff. Why are you doing things different now? Well, because they were making small improvements along the way, and 1 year later you come back, everything's completely different. 1 month was different from one month to the other. They were constantly making these type of small improvements along the entire way. DevOps Handbook, this one actually just came out probably about 2-3 weeks ago. Gene Kim, if you haven't heard of him, he's kind of one of the biggest evangelists in the space. Awesome guy. He does some really good work on DevOps. Also, he came out with the Phoenix Project, which kind of gained steam in the whole Agile movement probably about 2-3 years ago now. And the last one, Anti-Fragile. Nassim Taleb, he's actually a professor of economics, I think, like NYU, so he's really like an economics kind of guy. But he's talking about these anti-fragility, the concept of anti-fragility. It's how everything around us is so fragile, and he was specific about the economic markets. But if you can actually build these things to actually be a little bit more resilient, something that becomes stronger because of these failures, you can really have a really great solution. So that's it. Like I said, definitely hiring. So if anything I said sparked an interest or you're interested in learning more, tweet me, email me, grab me right now, and I'm interested in having some more discussions. So any questions?
I just want to point out that the company you work for, it has to do with car parts, right, or something to do with automotive. And
Yeah.
I looked into your company a little bit, right? So it's about car parts or something, right?
No, so actually anytime that anyone gets a toll of a car, we actually take it from an insurance company like State Farm or whoever it is, and we'll take it and we'll sell them online. So it turns out there's a lot of tollable cars out there, approximately about 2.2 billion in our market space.
Okay, I was
So
just really hoping it's about car parts because the irony of you doing a DevOps talk and talking about the Phoenix project, I was really looking forward to that.
No connection, purely coincidental. All right, that's it. Thanks, everyone.